In other words, there is a need for the moderate liberal Muslim voice to speak up
No,
and be heard.
no. This is again a cliche, and it tires me, because the moderate liberal Muslim has always spoken up, but nobody is interested because it doesn't make for dramatic headlines. I'll talk to you about myself, all right? Now, when we've all along been talking about the need for Muslims to look at reform within their own community, to look at education, to look at themselves, and look at several situations. It never gets any kind of huge coverage. But I took the Shahi Imam on, and you remember there was this incident when he had called for Indian Muslims to go and wage jihad in Afghanistan, and I had told him on a television channel, I said, what I'll do is arrange for you to be airdropped into Kandahar, so you can start your jihad there, your problem will be solved and so will ours. I mean, that grabbed newspaper headlines like nothing else could. But what I am saying is, why does it have to be something so sensational before it is picked up by the newspapers?
How responsible then is the press for conveying an impression of the Muslim community and of Islam perhaps, because they only concentrate on the mullahs and the long beards, because they don't concentrate and listen more effectively to people like you.
But you know, I wouldn't say that the press is doing it as a design or a conspiracy against Muslims, although I would want to see it like that, because they do the same about Hindus. It is Praveen Tugadia who gets all the newspaper
headlines. Except that Hindus being the majority are difficult to misunderstand, Muslims being a minority and in a sense being victims of what's happened as a result of the change of image after 9/11 are easy to target and misrepresent.
Much easier to target, but I think that if there is a call within the community to actively try and diffuse the image that it has got, I think that's a fair demand.
So do you make an appeal to the press? Do you say to the newspapers and television channels, there are a whole range of different Muslims, just as there are a whole range of different Hindus, try and portray some of the others who don't have beards?
All the time, and constantly I say that Islam is not a monolith, and don't portray it as a monolith, because you do it great injustice.
What about politicians who persist in trying to convert politics into something that's almost a quasi-religion? So that, for instance, you have the BJP saying that the UP is weak on terror because it will lose Muslim votes, or the left say that the Indo-US nuclear deal is anti-Muslim. Do you resent this attempt to portray ordinary everyday politics in religious or worse still Muslim terms?
Yes, except that, you know, when people say that, you know, this is for Muslim votes, I don't see any problem with that. Because if there is a constituency that's voting for you, then hopefully you will pay attention to that constituency. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, absolutely. There is nothing wrong with that. That's what you're supposed to do. If you have voted me into power, then it's my business to protect your rights. What's wrong with that?
But what about the position Omar Abdullah took during the vote of confidence in Parliament, when he spoke with passion? In fact, he spoke with anger at the fact that people were trying to portray him through his religion and his politics through that religion, and he resented it.
Yes, of course, absolutely. You know, see, India's greatest strength is her composite culture. But in recent times, there is a concerted effort to compress identity into the narrow confines of the religion that you were born
into. And that happens most with Muslims. Time.
So you are Hindu, I am Muslim, she is Christian, so on and so forth. This is not true, because if you were to look, for instance, at Kashmiri Muslims and Muslims in Tamil Nadu, then in spite of the fact that the religion is the same, the Kashmiri Hindu and the Kashmiri Muslim have much more in common with each other than the Kashmiri Muslim and the Muslim from Tamil Nadu.
How do you then today view the crisis in Kashmir? What you're saying about the differences between Kashmiri Muslims and Muslims elsewhere, or the affinity between Kashmiri Muslims and
Kashmiri Hindus, because of the factor of Kashmiriyat and because of their cultural...
So then how do you view the crisis in that state, where the two communities are literally pulling apart and their emotions spiraling out of control?
Because it's a cauldron. The situation has been allowed to go out of hand, and there is a deliberate attempt to communalize it, which is a huge pity, because always, look, the history of Kashmir, people have, because of the factor of Kashmiriyat, very strong bonds with each other in spite of the differences. See, it's wrong to say that you will not have differences. Of course you will have differences. My whole point with anybody who has a difference, see, I do not need to love my neighbor. as myself, that cannot happen. But all I need to do is not kill my neighbor and not burn down his house.
But are you worried that what's happening in Kashmir and what could be spiraling out of control could create differences between Hindus and Muslims elsewhere in India?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can see that happening, and that's why I'm so distressed over what is happening in Kashmir, and for heaven's sake, this should be brought to a stop. It should have been brought to a stop right when it started with that nonsense.
So it's not just Kashmir, it's India that's at stake.
Absolutely, yes.
And this is a challenge to our integrity and our future and our unity.
Yes, and I think if the politicians haven't woken up to it yet, then they really don't know what's happening.
Shabana Azmi, let's take a pause at that moment. I want to come back and ask you a critical question as a former MP. Has Indian politics been unfair to Indian Muslims? We'll be back in a moment's time. See you after the break.